We are reaching closer to the end of The Reckoning. It's sort of bittersweet, but with it, we're listening to the album as a whole. Well, minus, I'm not covering the interludes and stuff like that. There's like 3 brief ones in the course of the album. I'm covering the main tracks. But I've really enjoyed this whole release overall. Again, as I stated previously, I've been covering Icon for Hire for months now with this new album. I've been a fan for a very long time. Over a decade, given scripted. I've been a fan for that long. Long existent member of the Icon Army. And I've really enjoyed this 5th album. It's a strong release through and through, but it really speaks to a talent that I've come to recognize and revere with Icon for Hire. Longtime favorite, as I stated, and I've always wanted to make bands like this one a mainstay in regard to my coverage. I like showcasing art that I find is definitely worth note and respect. Perhaps for those of you out there who might not have been introduced yet to Icon for Hire. This is part of the reason I started making music, not just because I wanted to, since the beginning of when I started this channel, but I've been venturing more into making music a particular mainstay on this channel. It's a favorite art form, and I found so many artists, in the realm of music from wherever, whatever genre, whatever place in the world. I found so many talented creators of truly magnificent, cathartic, encouraging, and powerful pieces of engagement. And I would certainly apply that Icon for Hire is truly a talent that deserves to be spotlighted. And I've tried to do my best with this album, not only because I enjoy this band so much, but because The Reckoning has been a very strong release. I mean, I knew it would be. Again, 5th album, I've listened to all 4 at this point, and all the singles that have released in between. I know what I was going to be getting, and ever since Ready for Combat, I've been impressed. And I don't tend to do full-length album reactions that often. It's very sporadic. It depends on my schedule. It perhaps depends on the artist. Sometimes I like to just jump right in. But, I do like to share my thoughts on music. So generally I'll cover, a general mix of singles and maybe some other tracks as well. But again, mostly depends on my schedule and just how much time I have. But I'm like, for Icon for Hire, I love this group. They deserve a spotlight. And plus there's only about 6 remaining tracks in regard to the full album release, which came out today. Why not just cover the rest? I mean, it's been an enjoyable ride thus far. Let's have even more fun with the finished release. And it's been quite the ride. We just finished with Sunflower. So far, I've covered their first 4 tracks. I'm going in chronological order of the album. And now we have Diseased. So we're kind of going back into that more ominous tone. I mean, Sunflower had a more ominous image, but the name suggested to me, at least on the first impression, we're going from all I see is darkness, which certainly had a more tragic disposition to it. But, again, an empowering one, which is very familiar for them. Of course, you're not familiar with Icon for Hire. Then we went to Sunflower, which is, a very tangible object and is beautiful, right? But even when you listen to the song, you're like, well, that's not, the impression that I first had is not entirely correct. It still had a bit of a, tragic side to it, but it was still it was a very different piece and tone. It was more ballad. When this particular album has been much more rock heavy. Let's see where Diseased goes. I am sensing a harder vibe, which as a metalhead I do like, and I've loved the fact that we're returning to roots here with scripted, with the rock basis. That's really gelled with me thus far for The Reckoning. I've loved it thus far. Maybe this is a first introduction for you in regard to Icon for Hire. Maybe you're a longtime fan like me. If it is a first introduction, I hope this speaks to a level of talent that I've come to revere. I'm sure it will. This is Icon for Hire after all. I'm going to go ahead and cue up Diseased. We can listen to the song together. And of course, as per usual with my music-related coverage, I try to provide every accommodation that I can depending on the listener's taste. And so I will provide, through superimposition, the lyrics for the song if you choose to read along with the narrative of the piece. And of course, we'll discuss it more, in regard to the review stage of the video. But if you want to read along with the message of the piece, I provide that accommodation for you as we proceed for the track, and you can marry the two together. All right, here we go. Depending on your interest. Maybe you just want to hear the song, in which case I'm going to cue that up right now. Okay, interesting intro. Definitely more rock heavy. We're engaged right from the beginning, that sound, it's quite the shift from Sunflower. Okay, we're going back into the thick, aggressive edge here. It works. Interesting energy. Good mixture between rock and hip hop. The punk emo side that Icon for Hire is known for. This fits. I think that whisper, it's good. And then drop the music off too on that section, that's beautiful. Is this gonna be a rap edge? Yep. I just sensed it. You thought it was meekness, not strategic. You don't see it coming till we on you like leeches. We say no weakness, rip you to pieces. Me and my family's hunger is ceaseless. Underestimated till you see the data. Looking for we made it in the day. Now dominated ever. On your best behavior, now you know we underrated. Pop metal of a settle, bring you up to a level. Wow. I'm a lady, I'll set you free. Better check for rabies. We're all diseased. We're all diseased if you please, if you please. We're all diseased if you don't please. We're all diseased if you please, if you please. This song in particular is really resonant with Ariel's heart as expressed as an artist. I mean, that whole rap section, if you read the lyrics, yeah. Okay, so that's the second release, or what was I meaning to say? That's the second track before the end of the album, the conclusion. So that's ramping right back in regard to the consistent tone that this album, for the most part, has maintained with the rock edge. It's, okay, I'll say it this way. I like the energy of it. It's the rock stuff that tends to resonate a little more with me, so the hip-hop vibe, it's fine. The We're All Diseased part, it did get a bit consistent for me, admittedly, just in the line. I get the point. It's still a good song, I think. It was just kind of like that one section. It felt, for me, a bit redundant. So maybe it's not necessarily my favorite song on the album, but it's still okay. I mean, I think it's well married to the tune of what Icon for Hire has done in the past in regard to a mixture of genres, which I've also talked about before, but they don't just tend to go with a rock vibe. They've done hip-hop, rap, obviously rap. That section's good. I'll get to that in a minute. I have a lot more compliments there. But it has that mixture that's been more established, especially among recent releases like You Can't Kill Us, or to some degree Amorphous. It's less thrash rock / metal that some of the ever preceding tracks have had, that those tracks in particular have really resonated with me on the rock energy because I'm a metalhead. It just kind of has a bit of a softer delivery, at least for, where I feel my favorites on the album line up. It's still okay though. It fits, again, I think, in line to some of their previous releases with the mixture of genre. There is a bit of a balance in here, even though, again, it's much more rock dominated, which I appreciate, again, as I said. The lyrics themselves, it's a very, I'd say, rebelliously visioned song against the status quo. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what the focal point is, but we're all diseased. I mean, that is an interesting line, because, I previously with Gatekeepers, I think that's the 9th track on the album. Ariel basically said, that her fans in that case are the ones who were rebelling against the gatekeepers, whoever you might envision that to be. And I think there were some definitive ideas for who that was envisioned for in regard to the lyrical construction, but maybe you apply it differently. But we were labeled psycho in the song. I'm like, well, I usually hear psycho described from a negative disposition, but I guess in the view of conformists, or the conformist mindset, I would be called psychotic. So I guess there's a positive side, at least for once being called psycho. I appreciate the deviation, Ariel. It's maybe less negative, but now it's a label that we can reappropriate and appreciate, depending on your circumstances or perception. Even though, as a psychology major, or intended, I will say that there is a value in, maintaining labels that are identified clearly, right? So somebody, let's say, who has more of a psycho disposition, right? There's a value of maintaining the authenticity of the word, but you can apply it maybe in clever ways, especially in a more poetically structured and envisioned writing. I like the idea of, we go from psycho to we're all diseased, right? But maybe we're the better for it. Again, maybe that's the general view in society that, you all over there who are indifferent perhaps to mainstream conventions, you would be deemed an anomaly. That's kind of speaking of, like, let's say putting psycho in a more positive context, I've, openly labeled myself an anomaly, right? Because there's reason to why, I mean, even deeper than maybe even I'd like to get into sometimes, but it's a label that I've sort of characterized myself with because I just see that energy in the way that I interact with the world and the way that I understand the reality I live in and where I fit in life. I just don't see myself fitting in that well, but I do see in some ways that I am the better for it. There are advantages to being indifferent. There are, clearly. Now, again, it depends on context, but when I'm speaking to, it's actually, I'd say it's better to not necessarily fit in as well. If it comes at the expense, in my world in regard to individuality and personal independence, I'd say it's certainly an advantage. So again, like I said, with the song, it may not be my favorite on the album overall, but it's an engaging track. I think it ramps the pacing back up. It's doing its obligation for the overall structure of the album. It's still kind of a fun song in regard to the playful rage energy. That rap section is fire. The way that Ariel constructed that, and she's gotten faster too, my word, especially on that ending. She's really belting her heart out too here. But the lyrics, they're so creative. Maybe you were like, it went too fast, I can't... Hey, that happens with rap sometimes. It depends on how fast the artist can get, right? There are some really talented rap artists in the world that you're like, what did you just say? I have to go back and read the message again. I'll tell you, it's going to be, as much as I appreciate it, it's going to be a nightmare for me to edit as I try and make everything accordingly. It's going to be like hyper cuts. Anyway, just to list every word that was spoken here. I like the way it's fixated, though. I mean, it's such creative wording. Where is it? You thought it was meekness. Nah, strategic. You don't see it coming till we on you like leeches. Again, it's just such an aggressive articulation. Me and my family's hunger is ceaseless. I wonder if she means like her family being like the Icon Army. I wonder if that's what she means. Look how far we've made it in a dated male-dominated era. Well, that speaks to, let's say, that actually harkens back in the past, too, of Now You Know. I mean, that's certainly been on Ariel's heart, at least as she's expressed in previous releases, in regard to being, I think, one of the most powerful female lead singers I've ever heard, but especially in the independent scene. I mean, I revere Icon for Hire for that. Just to see how far they've succeeded has really impressed me. Even aside from just how talented they are as artists, I don't tend to see our independent artists, although many go the path of being liberated from mainstream institutions. I've not seen many succeed in boldness and in prominence like I have Icon for Hire. And I think that is mostly motivated not just by the talent of the artist, but by the fan base. The Icon for Hire really resonates with people. Talent like that rap section, that steals the song for me. That's the best element to it. Again, it might not necessarily, in my opinion, be, although I'm still trying to be as polite as I can say, it might not be my favorite song in regard to the overall construction of the album and the retract by comparison, but it's still a fun, lively release. And again, it reinvigorates that previous energy that did transition off of Sunflower, but we're getting to the conclusion of the album that's more rock-centric, so it's revamping it. So again, there's a purpose that this certainly succeeds in. But even the energy of the piece fits with the more rebellious side and the metaphor of the album. That rap section, though, is just, that's so gold. That's perfect. What are your guys' thoughts of that? Maybe you're like, this is my favorite track on the album. And so I'd love to hear your opinion on that down below. Or maybe, whatever standpoint you come from, if you're a longtime Icon for Hire then, or if this is a first introduction. This is definitely, if this is your first introduction to them, this is a good testament to the mixture of genre they played with in previous releases. Certainly. It's less rock intensive in comparison to some of the other tracks on the record, but this is more reminiscent of some of their older works. And maybe if this is your first introduction, you haven't heard some of those previous releases. I'm sure listening to Diseased, and then perhaps, and I would recommend this, going back and listening to some of their original works, you would see the argument I'm making as being sound in that. Again, this really invigorates to me an energy that's more consistent with albums like You Can't Kill Us, especially, or their self-titled one. Let me know what your thoughts are down below and what angle you come from. I'd love to hear perhaps your perspective on the track, however you interpret it, or where you're looking at it from. One more track to go as I make my way for the entirety of The Reckoning. I've loved it so far. Stellar release. Let's see, where Messed Up wraps up with, but I mean, Disease was good. I'm definitely teased though for the ending. If it maintains this level of energy, sure will be a banger song. But Disease, again, that rock section, or not rock, the rap, that really worked for me. It would be cool to see in the future too if they do more rap intensive stuff. It'd be impressive to see just how far Icon for Hire goes with that, because REL, wow, that's talent. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.